So September 29th, 2006, you guys were doing another operation in support of the 1st to 506th.
Operation Kentucky Jumper in the heart of the Moab district, right by the stadium. And we had inserted the night before. Again, in an area we had operated multiple times before. We knew it like the back of our hand. We had taken multiple positions in that area. And on this specific one, we had taken a very dominant building. And when I say dominant, in terms of height of eyes, we had the height over any other building. And we were as diligent and methodical as we were with any other mission. And shortly after sunrise, we were engaged with the enemy. First of the 506 had come in to clear several sectors of the Moab district. And I think by noon, myself and another SEAL sniper had eliminated 4 guys. And, 2 had sort of laid down to get some rest because we'd been up for close to 24 hours. And Mikey and I were holding security. And Mikey actually jumped on my sniper rifle to get some gun time. And there was a SEAL to his left, 3 feet, and I was 3 feet to his right. And, of course, one of the things as a young guy, and I realize now, is I just always pushed to the edge. And sometimes to take care of the guys, you have to take care of yourself. And I just didn't learn that early on. So I'd always try to stay awake, and I'd try to sleep as little as possible because I thought I had to be there, in case they needed me to make a decision. In reality, they didn't need me there to make a decision. They had it, and I was very replaceable. But when you're young, you don't always realize that. And so I was in and out of sleep, bobbing, sitting on the ground. Mikey was sitting in a chair, and Mikey and I were in conversation, basically about going home because we knew that was one of the last missions. And Mikey was excited because he was going to sniper school. I don't know if you remember that. You guys had lined that up. He had been a machine gunner most of the, all the deployment, located right next to JP, who was the point man. And so that was Mikey's job, was to overwatch, like St. Michael, overwatch JP in case they ran into enemy contact. They would be the first ones, and Mikey would lay it down. And Mikey had laid it down on multiple occasions before. And then the other thing we were talking about is he was dating a girl, and we were talking about that. He knew I was excited because my daughter at the time was 2 years old. And, I don't think I'd talked to my family much on that deployment because we were just so busy. And that's sort of my style, too, is once I'm deployed, it was easier for me not to talk to my family because it was actually a distraction because it would mess with my mind. So you knew the mission was to get home to your family as quickly as possible. And the best way for me to do that, I'm not saying it was the right way, was to focus on what I needed to do. And it had 100% of my attention because I would not, for the life of me, I would not allow one of my guys to get killed. But unfortunately, that's out of our control. It's war, and war's not clean. But midday, contact had died down. There was still movement out there. But during the conversation, a grenade had come over the roof. And again, I was in and out of sleep, but what really sort of snapped me to, and heart was racing right away, was Mikey snapped up. Remember, he was in a seat. The grenade had come over the roof and hit him in the chest and bounced on the ground right in front of him. And now there's a lot of accounts out there that are wrong. I saw some other SEAL speaking to a crowd about this, that there was a entrance to the rooftop, that stairwell that would go down in the main building. And that wasn't true. We were actually like 15 meters from that stairwell at the very edge of the roof, closest to the street. When Mikey had the greatest chance of getting away, is that all he had to do was dive in the other direction. And he'd most likely take a little shrapnel to the bottom of the feet and to the calves, but he would have gone home. And the thing that amazes me is, I'm not the dullest tool in the shed, nor am I the sharpest. But the cognitive ability to assess what just did happen and the potential outcomes, that if he chose self-preservation, which is not a wrong call, that the SEAL to his left and myself would have just eaten the grenade in the face completely, just done. And the other SEAL to his left had kids as well. And, you play this over in your head, and trust me, I play it every day. And the first thing I think about when I wake up is Mikey and my kids, and the last thing I think about when I go to sleep is Mikey and my kids. And the reason I say that is there's a picture of Mikey on my wall, and it's the iconic picture of Mikey with Seth and another SEAL in the background with the yellow smoke, and he's carrying the machine gun, and he yelled grenade, and then he dove down on it, and not to add humor to the situation, but it's almost like that scene from Snatch, where the guys are frozen as the shotgun's going off, and they say you sit there with a stupid look on your face.
Yeah.
I probably sat there with a stupid look on my face because we're in the heat, midday, we've been up for 24 hours, we're exhausted, and it just happened so fast, and Mikey just took action in a matter of milliseconds. I mean, he assessed the situation, he knew the outcomes, and he made the most selfless decision that anyone can ever make. There's no walking away from that. And I know there's some people that have walked away from jumping on a grenade, but those are statistical anomalies. And it went off, and by him smothering it, it funnelized the grenade blast to the sides towards the SEAL to his left and to myself. And we almost had mirror wounds, like through and throughs in both legs. And I'd never been that close to an explosive. We work with explosives all the time within the SEAL teams, but we are very diligent about mitigating risk and the parameters that you have to be so far from the explosives. The thing actually picked me up and flipped me over, and I could feel the pain. People talk about if you're shot or you're wounded, like you don't feel it, the adrenaline takes over. That ain't the case. It was immediate hot metal burning inside my legs or through and through wounds, just bleeding. So at the time, I didn't know if I had legs. I didn't even want to look. So I put my head, sort of forehead, on the dusty rooftop and just took that big sort of bite, ate the pain, and a third or a fourth SEAL was already moving towards our direction. He'd been affected by the blast as well. It didn't take any shrapnel, but it rattled all of us. And looked at Mikey, whose head was turned towards me, and I yelled, "Mikey, Mikey," and it was just lifeless. And so the next decision was, the next thing that happened is we start to get lit up by enemy machine gun fire. All chaos is breaking out. It's pure chaos. It's pure hell. The Iraqi soldiers on the roof with us, except for one who was close to us, but he was actually stricken and fair in the fetal position. They all ran off the roof and left us. So you've got one critically, mortally wounded, two somewhat out of the fight, they can't stand up, and then the third is dealing with Mikey. And so we were left, pretty much, you could say left to die by the Iraqi soldiers. And so I immediately went to my embedder to call for Seth, who was in a mutually supporting overwatch position about 500 meters away. And the blast had knocked out my embedder. And so I'm calling, finally, I pull the embedder out, and it's just clear screen, and I turn it back on, reset it. But the embedder has to go through it loads the program, and it takes a minute, let's say tops. I didn't have a minute. And so, still haven't looked at my legs. I'm looking around, and I see the Iraqi soldier. And you remember, his name is Mohammed, actually spoke English. And he's in the fetal position. He's just stricken by fair. And so I get up to run over to him. And as I stand up to run, I just go right down, literally on my face. The legs just wouldn't work. And again, sort of eat the pain, which glad to do given what Mikey's going through right now and what he did for us. And I crawl over there, and the Iraqi soldiers used Motorola's. And Seth had Iraqis with him as well. And so I actually called out to Seth. Seth eventually got on that Motorola. And then I said, hey, we're hit bad. Mikey's down hard. We need you now. And they knew something was going on because the fire's just, hitting our building. But you, as a commander, you have to wait. You let the situation develop, find out, let your assistant platoon commander call back and give you a sit rep of what's going on. He's probably on the radio trying to find out. But I got back to him probably within a minute after the whole grenade blast had gone off. And Seth said, hold on, we're coming. And so I crawl back to where Mikey's at. The four SEALs dragging him away from the wall. And then he's trying to work on him. And I told that guy, I'm like, hey, get on the machine gun. Because remember, Mikey carries the machine gun. It was right there. And he starts to lay down return fire. And it seemed like ages before Seth got there. But finally some Iraqi soldiers had come up and they're starting to return fire. But, it probably only took Seth 5 minutes. But you got to remember, Seth and all those guys were set up within their position. Mm-hmm. They weren't ready to move. So they had to leave a lot of stuff behind. They sometimes you're not wearing your kit because it's so hot and you're there for, it was a 48-hour operation. You're not always wearing your kit. So they have to throw on their kit probably and get to us. And then when they move into the street, what happens? The enemy shifts fire.
They're under fire.
And, we didn't have our morphine kits. And this was a problem with sort of the process of how that worked. If you remember, we had sent home the guy who was signed for him about a week earlier. And so I remember I finally had the courage to look at my legs. And I didn't expect to see anything there. And there was two legs, very bloody ACU pants, but they were there. And that was sort of a relief in a sense. Okay, hey, my legs are there. They're just not working right now. And I went to grab for my morphine, and it was gone. And so the other SEAL and I are we're in pain. But, okay, no morphine, moving on. Seth eventually gets there, and they start working on Mikey. They didn't know the building we were in. And apparently, again, gotta love I think you actually activated the Bradleys that met us on the backside of the building, a completely different street. I don't know. Again,
there was some confusion about where to go, and I did my best to clear that up from what I remember, which I don't remember very well.
Well, two of the guys from Seth's element grabbed me, and I led them through the stairwell down. There was an adjacent door to a building behind them in the backyard. So we went through that building to the road that was on the other side, a parallel road from the road we were operating on. And it was a main road. And they throw the other wounded SEAL and myself in there, and then the guy who was carrying Mikey brings Mikey into the Bradley fighting vehicle, and we take off. And that guy, the look on his face was pure exhaustion. Now, within the military, we always, we train to the buddy carry, and we do it as part of like physical training. But you're also rigid when you're carrying your buddy, and he's got his hand in your back. And Mikey was not a small boy. Easily probably 210. He's about 6'2", 6'3". And this guy who carried him he's a physical stud, and he was exhausted. And we talked about it years later because he sort of put Mikey down in the Bradley vehicle, and he sat down and just sort of was exhausted and sat there, and I yelled at him, I'm like, hey, what are you doing? Start CPR. And he sort of snapped to and started CPR. And, he actually came to me years late. And he's like, man, I'm really sorry about that. I'm like, brother, you don't have to apologize. You had just carried him, probably 100 meters with combat equipment on, and you just, you weren't with it. You took a second to recover. That it's not your fault. But everyone finds fault in that day, and everyone feels bad. JP, who should have been there, but had cut his finger, if you remember, wasn't there. And, It was, you talk about the relationship with the 506. Again, it seemed like ages from the Bradley to get from our position in Central Ramadi, Malab, to the Corregidor aid station. Mm-hmm. And I do remember when I got there, the medic gave me a little shot of morphine, and like 3 minutes go by, and talk about losing your composure. I'm like, hey man, I'm in freaking pain. And I regret saying this. It was just like the stupid things you say when things are going wrong. And I grab him by the collar. I'm like, I'm a Navy SEAL. You've got to ramp that shit up. And I could tell the look of sort of frustration as he comes back and sticks me. And finally, like, the morphine hits and the pain subsided. But what I remember vividly is, one, they had very little capability for surgery. In fact, none at all. And they had to prep us. In 46s were inbound to get us. And who shows up? Dave Womack, Colonel Ron Clark, and the senior leadership from the 1st to the 506. In fact, there was probably 100 soldiers out there. And so they bring us out on the stretchers. We're strapped down. And Dave Womack has some Oakleys, because remember, it's still midday, and he puts them on me, laying on the stretcher. And I flew off with those Oakleys. And if you know the Army, they don't get good gear, especially in the infantry. That guy just gave me his eye protection that I flew off with, but they saw us off. And next thing I know, I end up in Al-Taqaddum, TQ.
TQ, yeah.
For surgery. And again, who's waiting for me? Rob, your counterpart, mm-hmm. and all the boys. Mm-hmm. And so before they rushed us into surgery and put us under, Rob was there, but they thought, and in retrospect, I still struggle with this because I was almost upset with it at the time. It was almost like rubbing a dog's face in its own feces for taking a crap on the carpet. Is they thought we would want to see Mikey, and so they laid both of us right by Mikey, who was declared deceased by this point. It was just almost like a point of shame, a point of utter shame. And I just couldn't even look. The other SEALs in tears, I'm in tears, but I just couldn't look. And I know they had nothing but the best intent. But at the time, it was like, I don't want to see this. I know what I did. I know what happened.